Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Together, we'll explore and enjoy content and conversations around mastering transitions in our relations, our wellness, our careers, our families, and especially in our missions and visions. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. I have with me an old friend with whom I have only spent a very brief period of time, but we got to present together. And as our listener might know, Yogi Cameron, when you are thrown into sort of a spotlight together, there's something that happens and you become an instant cohesive unit, as we did that day on the stage at ABC those many years ago. I have the great honor of having Yogi Cameron here with me today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yes. So you spent, as I did, over a decade in fashion. You were a model as the face of many high fashion and beauty brands, actually. Any favorites of those that you can point to?
Oh, always Valentino,
Yeah, that's what I
Versace.
remember.
Yeah, Karl Lagerfeld was always a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So beautiful. If you're listening to us and you haven't seen his face yet, I would strongly recommend you go look it up. So beautiful. And that beautiful face is a result of a beautiful heart, as you will now learn. You began through this experience to understand what sort of drives folks to be obsessed and concerned with outer beauty, but you were also very curious about what happens on the inside. You then landed in India and you spent 18 years studying yogic philosophy, Ayurvedic medicine, both as a practitioner and as a yogi. And as many of us have, you found kind of what you needed in the studies regarding the mind, the function of higher consciousness. You talk about how you studied in Ayurveda, you studied the biology of the human body and how to sort of return or regain balance through the treatments and the lifestyle and the sort of daily quotidian practices. And then this 30 plus years of education has led to the creation of a beautiful business called 108. 108 Health and Beauty is what I have right in front of me right now. I've been using it for several months now. I love the products. These are basically liposomal Ayurvedic formulas. And what I would like to talk about today, I think, is how you came to creating these extremely innovative formulas that I'm super inspired to share, but also where you think all of this work is going in the yoga space. So first, let's start with 108.
Yeah, it's really a culmination of my own work, trajectory coming from India, and then looking at what's on the market, um, how the body works, and what works best in the body. And 108 came about really because of all the people that I treat, usually give them different types of herbs to take and concoctions, and pretty much all the powders taste really bad. And
They
people
do.
find it very difficult to take them. So I was thinking, okay, this has to be a solution. And then the pills, when you take lots of different pills, it really taxes the body to have to digest them, absorb them, and then put it through your body itself. That's not efficient either because if you're taking one pill, it's okay, but if you're taking four or five, it becomes a problem. As I was researching this over the years, I came across liposomal technology, which really comes from the pharmaceutical world, which is where you use machinery to break down the particles in the solution, make them smaller. So these make them what we call highly bioavailable, meaning they absorb quickly. I started to get very fascinated by that concept because now we're getting into AI, we use technology and science and all these things to simplify our life, supposedly. And I
Mm.
found that liposomal technology, married with the original formulas, did this. So suddenly I saw, like you experienced, oh, people can take a smaller dosage, get higher absorption, not have to dump a lot of stuff into their body. It's liquid, very easy to take. And suddenly they can be on the go, doesn't bother their digestion, and they're getting the goodness that they need, the nourishment they need from their supplements. And this suddenly worked. I found that from all the reviews people and the conversations we have with everybody, they start to say, yeah, I find it very taxing to take lots of supplements. I don't even know if they really work in my body. But these I feel, you're really feeling them only because absorption is very quick. So you can tell. So it's not like taking a powder or a pill and 3 hours later you might feel something. Here you're getting, within minutes an effect and you feel it and you say, oh, okay, I get this.
Mm.
Um, and then also there's no danger of you overtaking them either. Because what's happened in the supplement world, as it has in yoga world, in every part of industry, is people tend to supersize everything. So they supersize their meditations and their supplements and their food and everything, thinking, more is better. And when it comes to supplements, like medicine, it's better you take less. If you're very sick, it's different. And that short amount of time, a few days, you might need more. But in general, to maintain your body as preventative medicine, let's call it, you really need small amounts. That means the body isn't taxed. You're not doing the job of the body for it. You're just giving it some help to do its own work. And that's really the beauty of how the liposomal formulas work.
Yeah. I feel that I've actually just now taken the de-stress, the Fortify
Mm,
formula.
yeah.
Tastes so good with ashwagandha. But I think the point that you're making right now is something that we can take with us sort of on a broader scale. The small amounts consistently delivered.
hmm Yeah. And, people talk about baby steps, and I typically say baby steps are for babies. We need to take adult steps. But it's really about putting enough food in your body, doing enough practice, taking your supplements in the right amount, that your body and mind are just operating at an optimal way where they're not forcefully being pushed to do something. Years ago, when I first trained in yoga, and I was in New York and I did a 6 months yoga training before I went to India. A lot of the guys would stay up late and do lots of breathing practices, and then they couldn't sleep for like 3 days. you know, and I used to remember that, and I thought, oh wow, so you can overuse breathing practices and you can overuse water, drink too much water, so really finding that balance, I find, is being in tune, being very aware, mindful, and intuitive to what's going on in the moment. Not yesterday, not what's happening tomorrow, but what's happening in this moment, to how much of something you need. So even the recommended dosage, I say on the bottle, I say, you still got to be aware of, do I need a little bit more or a little bit less? And
Mhm.
nobody can tell you that. You have to know that
Yeah.
yourself.
I appreciate that note actually that you put on the bottle. I am kind of obsessed with these formulas, I have to say.
Mm.
They're always very close by. They travel with me from my desk over to the little podcast area when I'm working
Wow.
here, back over to the bedroom. Um, I would love to know. For the creator who might be listening to this podcast, because I have a fair amount of creators who listen to this and who also are guests here, how on earth does one begin to initiate this process of creating such an effective and important line?
It's like anything. All your viewers, we've all been through the same process where if we wanted to do something, we started it with a thought. Then we started it and we continued with an intention. Then we started to think, uh, how would I do this? And then you start the process and you keep falling and you failing and you keep coming to the wall. And then you think, how do I get around this wall? Because very few people make liposomal products. There are very few manufacturers. It's a very new development, so there's not a lot of choices, and you really go through it. The first when we first tried to make ashwagandha, we made it and it clumped up. It didn't mix with the oil, the sunflower oil we used. So we had to go through 3 or 4 different levels of understanding it, and you have to work with the people that you're working with. And it gets very frustrating at times because you're like, what's happening here? And then we would make, the trifala. It would be great. People would use it for 2 days. It was great. And then in the third, fourth day, it wouldn't work. So we went through a lot of that. And it takes a lot of patience. Did a lot of reading. I actually watched lots of videos of other people who started businesses
Mm.
to see, what are the pitfalls and what do you have to watch out for. And hands down, everybody says, perseverance, patience, never taking no for an answer. So it's a culmination of those kind of things that make you, as a yogi, I don't push. I don't push hard. I don't believe in that. I believe in balance. So it's still keeping yourself healthy, nourishing yourself, stimulating yourself, taking yourself through the creative process, but not getting totally consumed that it's not healthy. Because when you're creating a health product, the founder, you yourself, should be healthy. You should be an example for other people who will make healthy products. So that was something that I kept into. I added, let's say, to my training because I didn't hear that a lot out there, was to keep a balance. It was always about pushing hard. And the nature of business is like that. But yeah, it's a very instructive and lengthy process. And even now, educating people in why this is important for them. What is liposomal products? What are these formulations? Um, I mean, even down to what is an ayurvedic formulation, because now we have many brands making ayurvedic formulations, but there are 2 different types of formulations. There's the one according to the text, and those texts are from somewhere of 1,000 years to 6,000 years old,
Of
to
course.
people making their own blend.
Right. Taking some
Now,
liberties.
well, it happens a lot. People make products, they put them together, and then they say this is an Ayurvedic formula. But what makes an Ayurvedic formula is truly the fact that it came from the text. I am not the sage who made, and I am not the doctor at those ages who made that formula. It was made in the precise time, using astrology, planetary positioning. The temperature was precise, the mixture was precise. I would equate it to how you chant Sanskrit mantras. They have to be chanted in a very particular way, a particular time, and the pronunciation has to be so spot on for them to have the true meaning and effect that you're looking for.
When you talk about the Ayurvedic text, what exactly are you referencing?
So there are different texts. Shushruta, for example, was one of the medical doctors at the time. So you have the Shushruta Samhita. That's one of the texts. I'm not talking about the Vedas themselves. The Vedas, the four texts of the Vedas are the books of knowledge, Veda meaning knowledge, and Ayur coming from Ayurveda, coming from the Vedas themselves. I'm not talking about those books. Those books are some, who knows, 6 to 10,000 years old. I'm talking about the doctors and physicians who came after that and who wrote down how you treated the patient. Um, there are some parts of surgery mentioned in the Vedas, but really all of Ayurveda and the medicines and everything came later by the physicians who were there 2,000 years ago, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And the reason that they are so prominent is because they weren't on their phones. They weren't doing business. They were in the forest. They were meditating. They knew by intuition and alchemy how to mix these formulations in the right quantity, in the right weather, in the right season. So that's why they are so prominent. And we call them, those are the texts.
Okay, thought I understand that now. So, a little further into the formulations, because I think to share them with our listener is actually a real benefit to them. These are not expensive, they're extremely efficient delivery. As we've talked about, liposomal goes directly into your cells. There are three formulations. The first is Lighten, and that has to do with detoxing, Triphala, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
Um, the second is Fortify, that has to do with de stressing, Ashwagandha, that's kind of my favorite, purple one. And then, of course, Purify, which has to do with your immune health and support. Um, how did you formulate these, and are you happy with how they've turned out?
Happy is very subjective in that we're always looking to see how the people react, because the most important thing is not how I find the formula themselves, but how do people react to them in terms of efficiency, and are they efficacious, when they go into your body. That's the most important thing. The reason I came up with these are because COVID was around, lung health, lung immunity became an issue. And what we're finding is the aftermath of COVID is very much to do with people's lungs being affected. So this will be with us for a while. And then, of course, when you get the flu and you get the cold, kapha, the element of earth, is what builds up in the body from the chest upwards. So in the throat, in the sinuses, in the sinus cavities, next to the nose, just above in between the eyebrows. And that cavities all fill up with the earth element, kapha. So it's mucousy. This formula is made for that. And a lot of people suffer from mucus as well. So cleansing the lungs, sinus cavity membrane is part of health. It's also part of our practice in the morning when we do shat karmas, which are all the cleansings where some people, they don't know, maybe they're doing a shat karma when they're doing the neti pot. So we do a slightly more exaggerated version of that. So that's the reason Purify came along. And then, of course, we live in big cities. The air is moderate and quite polluted. So having some support, I found being of kind of imperative. And of course, people have shallow breath, a lot of stress first affects the breathing. So overall, it was to give some support to the lungs that really never get any support in terms of cleansing. People think about cleansing in all sorts of areas of the body, but not the lungs in particular. Lighten is the famous triphala, being one of the formulations in Ayurvedic. And by the way, the Purify formula is actually and comes from the Chinese medicine. It's not an Ayurvedic formula. It does have some Ayurvedic herbs in it, but it's an 1800-year-old text formula that's mentioned in the Chinese text. And I didn't find one as effective in the Ayurvedic medicine, so I used the Chinese medicine for this one. And Chinese medicine is quite similar.
You know what's interesting is when I take the Purify, I actually am reminded of times when I've taken Chinese herbs in
Mm,
tea. I didn't mind the taste. A lot of people really find it repugnant, but I love Chinese herbs. So I
mm.
really love this formula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say to people, there's no sugars, there's no added artificial things. We have a little preservative, which is actually citric acid coming from lemon. We don't add any flavoring, so it's all just pure herbs. And for that couple of seconds that you take it, it will also help to cleanse the palate. And I say it to people as if you really find it, not palatable, it's because when your six tastes on your tongue is toxic in a way. You've got so used to artificial flavors. You could have been drinking wine. You could be taking a lot of sugar, different things that you're drinking. Very strong smoothies, whatever it is. What happens is your tongue and the six tastes get so used to certain flavors, and they totally reject other flavors. Because if you're eating a whole food diet, these should be quite tasty basically after you've used it once or twice. And that's another sign that your palate is not right, let's call it, or is not purified. Is when you really dislike, strong herbal tastes. And
That is a huge realization, by the way.
yeah, a lot of people complain about the taste, and I say, well, what are you eating? And then once we get into the second, third things that they're eating, I'm like, your tongue is basically numb. And when you put something organic on it, it totally opens it up like it does with a wine. When you let wine breathe, you let your tongue breathe, and suddenly you're actually cleansing the palate, and you don't like it. It has such a reverse effect on you because you're looking for sensory pleasure in everything you eat. And then what's happening is you're eating, artificial sugars. Even if you eat natural sugars, but you eat too much of it, then your tongue is basically polluted and it needs cleansing. So that's really what's happening. And that's, to me, all of these flavors are amazing because every day I'm taking different types of herbs and I'm eating whole foods, and we're not, I'm still eating sugar, but I'm not eating white sugar. And I'm eating, small amounts of sugar. I'm drinking 3 or 4 different herbal teas a day. So my palate is constantly getting cleaned throughout the day. So then if I, taste something that's artificial, I have the same reaction as people who taste something very natural and don't like it. So it's a reverse effect that happens.
I think that has been happening to me too. I've been on a bunch of herbs for quite some time with great, great results. And I don't have the same affinity for sugar that I used to have. I definitely don't crave it like I used to.
Hmm.
And I can kind of eat any foul old herb thing and just be like, oh, that feels actually really good, you know?
Yeah, that's a good sign.
Hmm.
Well, it kills your cravings, like you said. That's the other thing people said. Yeah, after I start getting used to that really kind of strong taste, it kills my craving for sugar and other things. When we're talking about one herb like ashwagandha, or we're talking about triphala, which is 3 different herbs, purify is 21 different herbs. Each herb is doing many, many, many things, multiple effects in the body. So Like with ashwagandha, the fortify, we're saying, okay, ashwagandha is one herb and we're using it mainly. Herbs kind of become famous. So if ashwagandha has become an adaptogen in everybody's brain. They're like, oh, I know that. That's an adaptogen. It's for calming. But ashwagandha is used in so many different things. It helps to build testosterone in the body in a very mild way. So women and men can take it. It builds sexual virility in the body. If you have weakness in the body. So these herbs are used for many different things, and they're not just one thing. That's why when people take it and say, "Well, I thought it was going to have calming effect and everything, but actually I feel invigorated at the same time." I say, "Yeah, because ashwagandha is a very invigorating hot herb. It's not a spicy herb, but it's a hot herb. It brings heat into the body, but it's mild, so it doesn't overheat you." That's why men and women can take it. Because sometimes people will say, "Oh, okay, that's a male herb." Well, it depends on the quantity that you take and how much of it you take. And how much of it do you absorb and digest? That also has to be taken into consideration. That's why you have to play and have a relationships with your food, with your herbs, just the same way as you have a relationship with somebody else. Because when you take these things, you'll get feedback in your body. You just not have to know and be cognitive of that feedback, and not just take something and forget about it.
Yeah, that I understand. We haven't touched upon the fortify. Well, no, you've just touched upon the ashwagandha. Um, Tell us a little more about this particular formula. It's really my favorite.
Yeah. Well, everybody is under some stress, thinking too much. It's part of the nature of running your own business, of working, going into the workplace. So the mind, really all our ailments, all our problems start in the mind because the mind is way too active. You could just be even reading on the computer something, and you don't realize that the computer is giving off certain rays because of the screen. You're interacting with something artificial. It brings down your energy a lot. So when you have the Fortify next to your computer and you're taking some of it, it helps a lot to not keep you awake. It does help to keep you alert because what it does is calms the nervous system a little bit and then you become more alert. It's not, like a ginseng or a green tea that, pushes you to be more alert if you take a lot of it. It's really very subtle in how it works. But of course, if you sit in front of your computer too long, then you shouldn't keep taking Fortify. You should get up, go outside, breathe the air, sit in nature a little bit.
Right.
The balance needs to be there. Supplements are not food, they're not nourishment. They're supposed to be used as a helper to the body to do its own job. But if you keep pushing the body too much, they won't work as well, right? And we don't want to keep piling it on and taking more and more because eventually they won't work. So you really need to have a balance of nourishing yourself with food, working enough, but with breaks. I guess your rule should be anything artificial that you're interacting with needs a break. I'll do this podcast, it's in front of a computer. Then I will go and drive and run an errand. Then I'll sit, have my lunch quietly outside. Then I'll do something, So I'm breaking up the time that I'm interacting with artificial, things, let's call them, because we need to interject a lot of nature into this artificial world that we're kind of living in. Otherwise, we'll get more and more, psychological problems and health problems. And the herbs and the formulas will work for you somewhat, but they won't help because the root cause will be too strong
Hmm.
for them to be against. So really, it's you have to find that balance.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think our listener will benefit greatly from just a momentary highlight on this way in which you organize your day so that you're in front of a computer and then you step away and then
Hmm.
do other things. Talk
So
about that a little bit.
the morning and the night we bookend with practice, sadhana. It's how we live. So it's not about how many hours you do. We wake up early, around 4. We chant. We take shower, brush teeth. We do shat karmas, cleansings of the nostrils and mouth and cavities. Actually, I oil the body before I shower because the biggest organ of the body is the skin. It needs some help. You know, things like the lungs, the skin, the joints, we really don't help these areas out. So when you oil the body with Ayurvedic oils, really helps a lot. Then shower, come and do practice, yoga, asanas, breathing, chanting, puja, all that stuff. So by 8 o'clock in the morning, ready for the day. First, to check in, see what the most important things are, like eating. Am I hungry? If I'm not hungry, I don't eat. If I am hungry, then I make something to eat. So you notice that I have not yet checked my phone. The phone
Mm,
is not in, a part of my being at this point. We don't sleep with it in the room. Um, I would have just tapped on it after my practice just to see if there was an emergency. There wasn't, then I continue, I eat or have my tea, coffee, whatever I'm having, and then I'm ready to work. So I start to work. So today I'm doing a podcast with you. And then after this, I'll check the emails. I'll go through, see what's the most important, answer a couple. Then I'm done with the computer. Then I go do something else. And then in an hour or so, I'll come back to the computer. I'll spend another hour. And then I'll close the computer and I'll go off. I do some exercise. And then again, I'll come back to the computer in a couple of hours for another hour, and that happens to be today's um, day. And then I'm done. So, really, I've spent 3 hours on the computer. I've been outside, I've done exercise, I've nourished the body. And then, if some days it's a bit longer and I need more time, then I'll go do something else. I play tennis, pickleball as exercise. So the idea is that you're getting some cardiovascular exercise. In the morning, I'm getting stretching with yoga. It all just makes things better throughout the day because we're not machines. We have feelings. We're organic. The morning may be your time where you feel the best. Maybe you feel better in the afternoon, or you get sleepier in the afternoon and you're not as good. So you have to know yourself to set the best routine out based on your elements, which is your prakriti and your nature. Ayurveda says everybody has their own nature, and different things work and different schedules work better for different people. Of course, some people work in the office, some people work at home as well, but they have kids. Find a way to adjust. I find that, like I was speaking with a client yesterday, I find that when you make your resolution, your sankalpa, your resolve to do something, and it's in your consciousness, you will get to it. So we don't start the conversation with, I don't have time and I can't do that. We start our conversation in our mind with, yes, this is what I want to do, and I will do a version of it even if it's my busiest day,
right,
right?
right,
So suddenly, even my busiest day hasn't stopped me exercising somewhat, hasn't stopped me doing my practice, hasn't stopped me nourishing my body. Because surely work will be there continuously and it's not never ending. So let's know that it's never ending and break it up so it continues day by day, but the work doesn't just take over our life.
right. You know, it's interesting. There are many days where, for some whatever reason or another, I have a kid I have to go bring him something at school. I missed the little 40-minute window for my movement, so I have to put it in later, but I don't miss it. Like,
Mm.
it's an absolute non-negotiable along with my meditation in the morning in the very early hours,
Hmm.
and it really helps. It changes everything. Like, if I'm in a really bad mood or, I'm doubting myself, I'm feeling really anxious, movement instantly changes it, period.
Hmm. Yeah.
Instantly.
Well, because you put it in your consciousness as a non-negotiable, so you don't ever come back to negotiate about it, right? So your whole energy about you has become, I do that. That's just who I am. That's how it is. Just the same as I eat, same as I drink, same as I take a shower. It's just
Mm,
part of my life. So people who don't do that keep negotiating with themselves about things, right? So we don't want to negotiate on things that are non-negotiable. We want to just put that to rest, and then it just becomes a part of our life. But we have to be honest with ourselves. A lot of times when I particularly work with people getting their routines in order and shuffling things around to find them more time. And a lot of the times we come to the understanding this person doesn't actually want what they thought they wanted, even when you find time for it. So, there's a lot of truthfulness has to go into that conversation with ourselves, which is, I have a small amount of time on earth. What do I want to do with this time? What do I truly want to do with it? Um, Not what I think I should do with it or what somebody else thinks I should do with it. Yesterday, I was talking with this lady. She's probably in her 60s. And, she's very clear about, when I leave my job, this finance job, I want to dedicate my life to practice and sadhana and going part of the time in India with my guru and then being here. Um, Understands what she wants. And then I speak to somebody else and they say, well, I think I need to do this. And they're not quite clear because they haven't opened the door and closed the door on their non negotiables, which are, this is part of my belief system. This is who I am. So let me put that to rest. Let me not revisit that anymore.
right.
And then
Not an
build,
option.
yeah, and an option, let me build my life around that thing that is non negotiable. And then everything will not become easy, but everything will flow.
Right. It's interesting. One of my courses called Simplify, I teach that this is actually the first thing you put into your calendar is your movement before your family, before your work. Like, that's wipe out your calendar after a week of really observing and seeing what's working. Wipe it out and then put in first movement daily. When is that
Mm.
happening? And it
Yeah.
works really well.
Well, you're in a flow and your mind is supporting your flow rather than going against the flow,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
When you want to simplify something, you're really saying is, well, I want to move all the obstacles out of my way, which are going to stop me living the way I want to live. But if the obstacle is you not understanding what you want in the first place, well, then that has to become clear.
Right. Of course. Of
You
course.
can't be a Christian and be a Muslim at the same time. You got to pick one, live one, still love everybody, still be part of everybody's life and everything, but one is one path and the other one is another path. So pick your path. It's like in yoga, pick your path and live that path. A lot of the confusion that comes into the yogic world is people keep jumping paths.
Mm, mm.
I'm trying this and I'm trying that and I've tried that. It's like, well, pick a path that's based on your personality and you thrive in it because it's going to take you, I don't know how many lifetimes to perfect that path, and there's definitely a lot going on each path. So enjoy it, live it, have a wonderful time with it, um, but thrive in it. And don't get frustrated that you're not getting anywhere, kind of thing, because that's part of the journey as well.
Yeah. Your site is 108 dot health.
Yeah, instead of .com, .health.
Yep. And what a great URL. Um, on your site, you have a section called Enlighten. Can you talk
Mm.
to us a little bit about what you're offering there?
Yeah, Enlighten is about, well, the blog is there to bring different subjects, pregnancy, inflammation, all the different things that people want to read about. And then Enlighten is there to show you, how we formulate, why we formulate, what's the history behind it, what is liposomal technology. All of the sort of more in-depth content is there on Enlighten. Like I said, together with the blog as well, which takes you into a lot of different subjects that will help you understand yourself better. That's why it's called Enlighten. It's about reading, understanding, gaining some more knowledge, and then applying that to your life in the way that we were just speaking about.
I think the last thing I want to address, I like to go into the dorky science of things. And the way that you describe under Enlighten on that page 108.health, you have the science. And
Mhm.
so when one clicks on the science there, you get to see the comparison between nanoparticles, micelle particles, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
And liposomes. Nano is basically shrinking things down to the smallest scale. Nano emulsion molecules with one end attracted to water and the other end attracted to oil are good carriers for nutrients. But the liposomes are the tiny little lipid bubbles that act as delivery vehicles to facilitate the absorption of the substances into our bodies. And these lipid bubbles protect nutrients from digestive breakdown so they can be readily assimilated cellularly. Your combination of liposomal and micelle technology is what makes this so magical. Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. Because everything that you take into the body, you put into the mouth, part of it absorbs. The smallest particles absorb in under the tongue to some degree. That's why when you drink alcohol, for example, you feel the effects of it quite quickly. So it's the same with medicines. The reason you start to feel that headache tablet work so quickly, some of that is absorbing. Ayurveda calls the mouth the little stomach because some of those tiny particles, nanoparticles, liposomal particles, micelle particles are getting absorbed in the mouth. Then more denser part goes into the stomach. Everything you take into your stomach, whatever you eat at chips, you eat pill, whatever you do takes the same route into the digestive tract. Now the acid of the stomach is hot and it starts to burn things up. Now if you take the smallest particles, they're going to get burned up straight away. So the liposomal delivery system is where that herbal formulation is encapsulated in an oil so it doesn't get destroyed. And that oil can be absorbed through the lining of the stomach. That is how some pharmaceuticals have delivered their formulas and medicines into the system as well. And that's why, a painkiller or something that somebody's taken has worked so well and so quickly. Here we're delivering the formulation itself, and if it's ashwagandha, it's been broken down into the small particle plus the oil and being encapsulated. Now it's being protected, so it doesn't get just burnt up and in the acid of the stomach. So that's a basic way of describing it. Um,
Makes sense.
yeah, it's been around this technology. I mean, we call it technology, we call it a delivery system. So, a delivery system is a pill, is a liquid, is liposomal. These are all called delivery systems. So, these have been around for a long time. Even in Ayurvedic medicine, a long time ago, they've used a lot of these things and they've mixed, formulas in oils. They just didn't have the machinery, but they've used them. So, there's nothing is new. Let's say that we're using all kind of things in a new way, but none of the technologies are really that new.
Got it. Well, I'm so grateful for your time today. I learned a lot here, got inspired, reaffirmed, and really appreciative of the way in which you have led your life and go about your business. Um, Thankful for you.
Thank you. I really,
Yeah.
it's been nice chatting, educating, being educated.
Mm.
Um, yeah, what you're doing for people is priceless in terms of your approach to things as well, and it's nice to also have a satsang and
Right.
yeah.
Yes, there's nothing like it. It's just been too long.
I know because, well, we also are in the world. One of my things is that years ago, teachers didn't have to work in the sense of earning a living. So, my Ayurvedic teacher, I remember when he basically living in the woods in India, and he had to come out and earn a living. And it's funny how things have become more stressful a lot of times for teachers as well, because we're having to be out there in the world and make a living and make a difference and all that. But we don't get time to step back either. We have to create, just like everybody else that we're helping, we have to do all those things. I guess the good part of it is we have a greater understanding of what people are going through because we are going through it. Whereas my guru and or his guru and his guru didn't um, have to because they were taken care of by the village. You
Right.
know.
It's an interesting thing, that last point that you made, that we are actually more attuned to what, you know, people are going through, whether they're teachers or not, because we also have to just make a living. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I
Mm-hmm.
had to diverge and diversify so much in order to support my family. And yeah, it's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of these things I contemplate because I read the history of of how people lived. And everything we're going through really now has multiplied. And when I was talking about supersizing, everything that's happened since really 100 years ago, since the Industrial Revolution, where everything multiplied exponentially, like 100 times, 200 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. The population, the speed at which everybody's thinking, the speed at which people are living, how much we're trying to cram into time and space. And so, from my point of view as an Ayurvedic practitioner, I'm seeing all the diseases, ailments, and strain that everybody has really because of society and the lifestyle that we have to live. So, really, to manage it all, there's an art to it. It really
Yeah.
is a dedication.
Yeah. That is well said. The art of it is not lost on me. And I think, like with all art, it's always evolving,
Hmm.
but there are certain things that one can do. And I think you're a really shining example of, how to organize your day so that you and your practices are prioritized. And then you can go in and be the, more reactive business owner that one needs to be.
Mm. Yeah. And for all you people who run your own business or work or the office, I'm there with you. As a yogi, I've got the spiritual life down. I'm joyful. I've got a lot of balance in life. But when it comes to running your own business, I bow to all of you because, or even managing yourself at work and working for a corporation, because I now understand what everybody goes through because I'm like, whoa, this is like a ride like no other.
Yeah, no, this is real. This
Yeah,
is real.
yeah, yeah. But
Gosh.
I've it has made me use my spiritual practice in many ways that I didn't think I needed to use it. So I
Mm,
guess that's a blessing.
that is a blessing. Well, thank you again, brother. Thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure for me. Once again, for our listener, The website is 108.health. 108 numbers, 108.health. And there you will find all of the formulas about which we've spoken, the science, the blog, so much education and information. I hope you enjoy. And Yogi Cameron, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.